This world stands united, and no force in the universe will break our peace.
Imagine waking up on a planet where the ground tries to kill you, where the air burns your lungs, where every single day is a fight just to stay alive. Now imagine being one of 60 soldiers abandoned there with almost nothing. Most people would die within weeks. But one woman didn't just survive. She built an empire. She went from being a forgotten recruit to controlling an entire world. And today, we are going to tell you exactly how she did it. This story will show you what human beings are truly capable of when they have nowhere left to run. By the end of this video, you will understand why some people say she's more powerful than entire governments. You'll learn how she turned an impossible situation into complete dominance. And you'll see why her name is now spoken with fear and respect across the galaxy. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The mission was supposed to be simple. That's what they told the 60 soldiers who loaded onto the transport ship. They were told they were going to a research facility on a remote planet. They were told it would be safe. They were told they had good supplies and backup would arrive in 2 months. Every single one of those things was a lie. The planet was called Class 8. Nobody called it that anymore. Now they called it the Deathworld. It earned that name in the first hour. Sarah Chen was just an ordinary soldier when she stepped off that shuttle. She wasn't special. She wasn't a leader. She wasn't even particularly brave. She was just someone trying to do her job and collect a paycheck. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She had no idea that she would become one of the most powerful figures anyone had ever seen. The first thing Sarah noticed was the sky. It wasn't blue like Earth. It wasn't even a normal color. It was a sickly purple that seemed to shift and move. The air tasted like metal. Every breath felt like breathing in needles. The gravity was heavier than Earth. Every step felt like you were walking through thick water. Within 30 minutes, 5 soldiers were already having trouble breathing. Within an hour, 3 of them collapsed. The facility they arrived at was falling apart. The generators weren't working properly. The water systems were broken. The food stores were half of what they were supposed to be. And then things got worse. Much worse. A storm rolled inches. But this wasn't like any storm Sarah had ever seen. The wind didn't just blow. It picked soldiers up and threw them across the ground like toys. The rain wasn't water. It was acid. It burned through clothing and equipment. It scarred skin. Soldiers screamed. People died. Within 3 days, they had lost 12 people. That's when Sarah realized the truth. There was no backup coming. There would be no rescue. They were on their own. Completely and totally alone on a planet that wanted them dead. Most groups would fall apart. Most people would give up. Most soldiers would sit down and wait to die. But Sarah Chen was different. She started watching. She started thinking. She started asking questions. Why did some people handle the air better than others? Why did certain areas of the facility stay warmer? Which direction did the wind come from during the storm? What patterns did she notice? While other soldiers were panicking, Sarah was problem-solving. She realized that the facility had been built by people before them. Those people had learned how to survive here. There were tools in the storage areas. There were notes in the old computers. There were blueprints for equipment. Sarah started teaching other soldiers what she was learning. She showed them how to filter the air so they could breathe better. She showed them how to collect water from the acid rain safely by using special containers. She showed them how to build shelters that protected them from the worst of the wind. Slowly, people stopped dying. Slowly, things got better. But Sarah wanted more than just survival. She wanted to thrive. She started exploring the planet. She took small groups out at first, always carefully, always prepared. She found something incredible. There was a valley on the other side of the mountains. In that valley, the air was better. The water was fresh. The ground was fertile. It was like an oasis on a Deathworld. Sarah brought her findings back to the others. And that's when she made a decision that would change everything. She told the other soldiers that they weren't just going to survive here. They were going to build something. They were going to create a real settlement. A real city. A real civilization. Not everyone agreed with her at first. Some soldiers wanted to stay at the facility and hope for rescue. Some thought it was too dangerous to explore and build. But Sarah had something that other people didn't have. She had a vision. She had a plan. And most importantly, she had the ability to make people believe in her. She started with about 30 soldiers who were willing to follow her. 30 people who believed that they could actually do this. And together, they began to build. They worked every single day. They built shelters. They created irrigation systems. They grew food. They established rules and systems for how their new society would work. And slowly, something amazing happened. Their settlement grew. And grew. And then it really grew. New buildings went up. Population increased. Technology improved. What had started as a group of 30 survivors became hundreds. Then thousands. Within just a few years, Sarah wasn't just leading a settlement anymore. She was leading a civilization. Sarah's settlement became known across the planet. Other groups of humans who had been struggling to survive started hearing about the valley where things actually worked. They started making their way there. Some came from other failed facilities. Some had crash-landed in different parts of the planet. All of them had the same story. Struggle, loss, almost no hope. And then they found Sarah's civilization, and everything changed. But here's the thing about power. Once you have it, people want to challenge it. They want to test it. They want to take it. Sarah realized that her settlement couldn't just be about survival and growth anymore. It had to have defenses. It had to have rules. It had to have a structure that could protect what they had built. She created a system of governance. She established laws. She organized people into different roles and responsibilities. Some people handled food production. Some managed water systems. Some were responsible for construction. Some handled medical care. And some, a select group of the strongest and most loyal soldiers, became her security force. Her protectors. This is where Sarah's true genius showed itself. She understood something that most leaders don't understand. People don't just follow you because you're in charge. They follow you because they believe in you. They follow you because they see you as someone who can protect them. They follow you because you give them hope. Sarah made sure everyone in her civilization felt valued. She walked among the people. She listened to their problems. She celebrated their victories. She mourned their losses. When there was food, everyone ate. When there was danger, she faced it first. She didn't hide in a comfortable building while others suffered. She worked alongside her people. But she also wasn't soft. When someone broke the rules, there were consequences. When someone threatened the safety of the civilization, she dealt with it firmly. People knew that Sarah was fair, but they also knew that she would do whatever it took to protect what she had built. As years passed, Sarah's civilization became more advanced. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were innovating. They took old technology from the failed facility and figured out how to make it work better. They created new technologies based on what they learned about the planet. They established trade routes with other small communities that had formed in different parts of the world. Then something unexpected happened. Aliens arrived. Nobody expected it. Nobody was prepared for it. One day, massive ships appeared in the sky. Strange-looking beings started landing. Everyone was terrified. This could be the end of everything. An alien invasion. How could a human civilization possibly stand against beings with advanced technology and resources beyond anything they had? Sarah did something bold. Instead of hiding or fighting, she decided to negotiate. She brought a small team with her and went to meet the aliens face to face. She didn't know if it would work. She didn't know if she would come back alive. But she did it anyway. The aliens weren't hostile. They were explorers. They had been traveling through space for hundreds of years, studying different worlds and different civilizations. They had heard reports of a human settlement on the Deathworld. They wanted to see it for themselves. They wanted to meet the person who had created it. Sarah showed them around. She showed them the valley. She showed them the farms and the buildings and the water systems. She showed them the people. And the aliens were impressed. They had never seen humans do anything like this. On most worlds, humans were primitive and weak. But here, on one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy, humans had not just survived. They had built a thriving civilization. They had become something great. The aliens made Sarah an offer. They wanted to help. They wanted to share technology. They wanted to establish trade relationships. They wanted to be allies. And Sarah, with her usual wisdom and foresight, accepted their offer carefully. She made sure the deal was fair. She made sure her people wouldn't become dependent on alien support. She negotiated like someone who had far more experience than she actually had. With alien help, Sarah's civilization advanced even faster. New technologies were introduced carefully, only after her people had proven they could use them responsibly. Trade routes expanded. Resources became more abundant. The valley continued to grow and prosper. But Sarah knew something that others didn't see. All of this power, all of this growth, all of this success, it all depended on her. Without her vision, her leadership, her ability to make people believe and work together, none of this would exist. And she understood that one day, she wouldn't be around anymore. She had to prepare for that future. Sarah started planning for succession. She knew she couldn't lead forever. Someday she would get old or sick or die, and the civilization would need someone else to lead them. She couldn't let everything fall apart just because she was gone. So she started training people. She identified the strongest leaders in her civilization and gave them more responsibility. She taught them how to make decisions. She taught them how to inspire people. She taught them the principles that had made her civilization successful. But she also did something else. She started establishing systems that didn't depend completely on a single leader. She created councils and committees. She established laws that were written down and that everyone could read and understand. She made sure that power was distributed among multiple people so that if something happened to one person, the civilization could still function. Meanwhile, Sarah's influence began to spread beyond her valley. Other communities heard about what she had accomplished. Some wanted to join her civilization. Others wanted to learn her methods. Some wanted to trade with her. Some even wanted to form alliances with her against other hostile groups on the planet. There were dangerous groups on the Deathworld too. Groups of humans who had gone in different directions. Some had become raiders and pirates. Some had formed militaristic governments that controlled people through fear and violence. Some were just struggling to survive and were desperate and unpredictable. These groups sometimes threatened Sarah's civilization. They wanted what she had. They wanted the resources. They wanted the power. They wanted to take over her territory. But Sarah had prepared for this. She had built a strong military force. Not just for defense, but for influence. When raiders would threaten her borders, her soldiers would push them back. When other groups would try to encroach on her territory, her forces would stop them. She wasn't aggressive, but she was prepared. And soon, everyone on the planet knew that attacking Sarah's civilization was a losing proposition. This led to something interesting. Some of the other groups started surrendering. Not being conquered exactly, but joining. They saw what Sarah had built, and they wanted to be part of it. They wanted to live in peace instead of constant struggle. They wanted access to the resources and the technology that Sarah's civilization had. And Sarah, being practical, accepted them, but she did it carefully. She integrated them slowly. She made sure they adopted her values and her systems. She didn't force them, but she made it clear what the expectations were. Within a generation, Sarah's civilization wasn't just a valley anymore. It was a network. It was a federation of communities spread across a significant portion of the planet. Hundreds of thousands of people now looked to Sarah for leadership. She had become the most powerful person on the Deathworld. Nobody could challenge her authority. Not through force, because her military was too strong. Not through politics, because her government was too stable. Not through rebellion, because most people supported her. And this is when the story took another incredible turn. The aliens came back. The ones who had visited her years before. They brought representatives from multiple alien civilizations. They wanted to formalize relationships with Sarah's civilization. They wanted to establish official trade agreements. They wanted to recognize Sarah's government as the legitimate authority over the human settlements on the Deathworld. Sarah negotiated a deal that was brilliant. She agreed to give the aliens access to certain resources in exchange for advanced technology and protection against any hostile aliens who might arrive. She basically made her civilization a protected territory. Nobody in the galaxy could invade it without facing serious consequences from the alien allies. But Sarah didn't stop there. She started thinking even bigger. If she could make peace and build relationships with aliens, why not use that to help other human colonies? There were other planets with human settlements. Most of them were struggling. Most of them didn't have leadership like Sarah had provided. So Sarah began sending emissaries and advisors to other colonies. She shared her knowledge. She helped them build better governments and systems. She didn't take control of them, but she guided them. She influenced them. She made them allies. Soon, Sarah wasn't just controlling one planet. She was influencing human civilization across multiple worlds. Everyone knew her name. Everyone knew her story. The girl who had been abandoned on a death world and turned it into a thriving civilization. The woman who had built an empire through vision and leadership instead of conquest and violence. Politicians and leaders from across human space began seeking her advice. Nations would send ambassadors to meet with her. Military commanders wanted her input on strategy. Scientists wanted her perspective on technology. Sarah had become more than just a leader. She had become a symbol of what humans could accomplish, a symbol of resilience and hope and determination. By this point in her life, Sarah could have retired. She could have stepped back and let others handle the day-to-day operations of her civilization. She had built something that could sustain itself. She had created systems that worked without her constant involvement. She had trained leaders who could take over when she was gone. She had earned the right to rest. But Sarah had never been the type to rest. She was a person who always wanted to do more. She always saw problems that needed solving. She always saw opportunities that needed pursuing. So instead of retiring, she expanded her vision even further. She became interested in what the aliens called interstellar politics. She realized that human civilization was small compared to the larger galactic community. Humans were relatively young and relatively weak in terms of military power. But humans had something that not every species had. Humans had adaptability. Humans had resilience. Humans had the ability to survive in places where other species couldn't. Sarah started building relationships with more and more alien civilizations. She didn't do it through military power or economic dominance. She did it through something more subtle and more powerful. She built relationships through respect and through providing value. She made herself indispensable to the political balance in her region of space. She would mediate disputes between alien nations. She would broker trade deals. She would sometimes provide military support to allies who were under threat. She built a network of relationships that made human civilization respected and important in a way it had never been before. There were people who opposed her. Some human leaders felt that Sarah was giving away too much power to aliens. Some felt that she should be more aggressive and expansionist instead of diplomatic. Some felt that she was holding humanity back by not pursuing more military dominance. But most people supported her. They understood that what Sarah was doing was smart, that she was building something sustainable, that she was creating a future where humans didn't have to constantly fight for survival. Sarah also invested heavily in education. She believed that the key to long-term success was creating a population of intelligent, well-educated people. She established universities and research centers. She encouraged scientific advancement and technological innovation. She made sure that the best minds in human civilization had the resources and support they needed to do their work. This led to breakthroughs in technology that nobody had expected. Human scientists, working in collaboration with alien scientists, began making discoveries that advanced all of their civilizations. New energy sources were developed. New methods of transportation were created. New medicines were invented. New ways of understanding the universe were discovered. Sarah's civilization became a center of learning and innovation. And through all of this, Sarah maintained her core values. She never forgot where she came from. She never forgot what it had been like to be abandoned on a hostile planet with nothing. She made sure that no one in her civilization ever felt abandoned or forgotten. She made sure that there were always systems in place to help people who were struggling. She made sure that everyone had access to basic needs like food and water and shelter. But she also maintained her strength. She made sure that her military was always well-trained and well-equipped. She made sure that her defenses were strong. She knew that in an uncertain galaxy, you had to be prepared for anything. You had to be strong enough to defend yourself, but wise enough to know when to make peace. After several decades of leadership, Sarah began to show signs of age. Her health started to decline. People began to ask the question that everyone had been wondering about for years. What would happen when Sarah was gone? She had built an empire, but would it survive without her? Sarah had thought about this question many times. She had prepared for it. She had established her successor. It was someone she had trained personally. Someone she trusted completely. Someone who believed in the same values that she believed inches. When she finally stepped down and passed the leadership to this successor, there were no revolts. There was no chaos. The transition was smooth. The civilization continued to thrive. But Sarah didn't disappear. She remained as an advisor. She remained as a mentor. She remained as the moral center of the civilization. When big decisions needed to be made, people still came to her for guidance. When the civilization faced crises, people still looked to her for inspiration and wisdom. She had become more than just a leader. She had become a legend. Years passed. Decades passed. Sarah eventually grew old. Very old. But she never lost her mind or her wisdom. People would still visit her. Young leaders who wanted to learn from her. Scientists who wanted her perspective on problems they were working on. Ordinary citizens who just wanted to meet the woman who had changed everything. There was one final revelation that came near the end of Sarah's life. It came from the alien civilizations that had helped her civilization grow. They revealed something that Sarah had never known. They had known all along that the transport ship had been sabotaged. The abandonment of the 60 soldiers on the Deathworld had not been an accident. It had been planned. Someone wanted those soldiers gone. Someone wanted them to die on that hostile planet. The aliens had their own theories about why this had happened. Maybe it was someone who wanted to eliminate potential threats. Maybe it was someone who wanted to test human resilience. Maybe it was political sabotage. The aliens never revealed who was responsible. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they were protecting Sarah from that knowledge. But it didn't matter anymore. Sarah had spent her entire life creating something meaningful from what could have been a tragedy. She had transformed abandonment into empire. She had turned despair into hope. She had proven that humans could accomplish anything if they had the right mindset and the right leadership. When Sarah finally passed away, the entire galaxy mourned. Aliens and humans alike recognized that a truly remarkable person had left the universe. Her funeral was attended by leaders and citizens from dozens of different worlds. The Deathworld, which had nearly killed 60 soldiers, was now a thriving center of civilization. It was a monument to what one person with vision and determination could accomplish. But here's the most important part of this story. Sarah was never superhuman. She didn't have superpowers. She didn't have any special genetic enhancements or alien technology that made her different from everyone else. She was just a regular person, an ordinary soldier who happened to be in an extraordinary situation. She succeeded because of her mindset. She succeeded because she didn't give up when things were impossible. She succeeded because she was willing to work harder than everyone else. She succeeded because she understood people and how to inspire them. Her civilization lasted for centuries after her death. It continued to grow. It continued to innovate. It became one of the most advanced and respected civilizations in its region of the galaxy. And it all started with one person who refused to accept that her situation was hopeless. The Deathworld was never exactly friendly, but it was no longer deadly. What had been a hostile, alien environment became a place of beauty and prosperity. The waterfalls that had seemed so terrifying when the soldiers first arrived became places of peace and beauty. The alien plants that had been poisonous became sources of medicine and food. The very planet that had tried to kill them became their greatest treasure. Sarah's story teaches us something important. It tells us that our circumstances don't determine our destiny. It tells us that a single person with vision and determination can change the entire course of history. It tells us that human beings are capable of incredible things when we refuse to give up. It tells us that leadership isn't about being born special. It's about choosing to act with wisdom and compassion even in the darkest moments. The legend of the Deathworld girl, as she came to be known, spread throughout human civilization and beyond. Young people on multiple worlds grew up hearing her story. They grew up inspired by her example. They grew up believing that they too could accomplish impossible things if they were willing to work for it and never gave up. And that, in the end, might be Sarah's greatest legacy. Not the physical civilization she built, though that was remarkable. Not the alliances she forged, though those were important. But the inspiration she gave to billions of people that they could be more than they thought they could be. That they could accomplish things they thought were impossible. That they could transform disaster into triumph through courage and determination. What makes Sarah's story even more powerful is this one final truth that emerged years after her death. Historians discovered that the sabotage of that mission had actually been orchestrated by people who wanted to break human resolve. They wanted to prove that humans were weak and couldn't survive challenges. They wanted to establish dominance over human civilization. Instead, Sarah did the opposite. She proved that humans were unbreakable. She proved that adversity creates strength, not weakness. The very people who had wanted to destroy human civilization ended up strengthening it. Their cruelty became the catalyst for humanity's greatest achievement. This twist reveals something profound about the human spirit. We don't just survive challenges. We transcend them. We transform them. We use them as fuel to become better, stronger, and more capable than we ever thought possible. Sarah's civilization outlived even the civilizations that had attempted to break it. In the end, human determination won. Human wisdom won. Human compassion won. And that is why her story will be told forever, not just on the Deathworld, but across countless worlds, inspiring countless generations to never give up, no matter how impossible things seem. Let me recap what we've learned today. First, Sarah survived an impossible situation, not because she was superhuman, but because she refused to accept defeat. Second, she built an empire through leadership and vision, not through force or cruelty. Third, she understood that long-term success depends on building systems that work without relying on a single person. And fourth, she proved that humans are capable of incredible achievements when we are willing to work hard and never give up. This story matters because it shows us what's possible. It shows us that our current circumstances don't have to define our future. It shows us that one person really can change everything. Whether you're facing challenges in your own life or you're dreaming about building something bigger, Sarah's story is a reminder that it's possible. If this story inspired you, I want to invite you to do 3 things. First, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We create videos about incredible human stories and science fiction narratives every single week. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Second, leave a comment below and tell us what inspired you most about Sarah's story. What part of her journey resonated with you the most? I read every comment, and I love connecting with our community. But here's the thing. If you really want to go deeper into these kinds of stories, I've created something special. I have a free newsletter where I share extended stories, exclusive content, and behind-the-scenes information about the videos we make. You can sign up for it right on our channel page. I also have a course where I teach you how to write compelling sci-fi narratives like this one, and how to develop your own epic stories. The link is in the description below. Before you go, here's my question for you. If you were in Sarah's situation, abandoned on a hostile planet with limited resources, what would be the first thing you would do? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know how you think. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.